All right, so we'll go ahead and get started with the Cox Campus Way. As a reminder, here are our core values. We want this experience to be rewarding for all. We want to empower all to secure a better future for our children with regards to literacy. We are committed to connecting with other change agents. We all want to feel safe, welcome, and accepted. And we are rooted in solid research to help change practice and make a difference in the lives of children. So if you are new to Cox Campus, or if this is your first knowledge building lesson for leaders session, please know that these sessions there are pre-work for these sessions, and it is required. So to fully participate in the session, you will need to have completed the reading comprehension course. If you have not completed this course, please consider joining our next session. And the pre-work for that next session is going to be setting the foundation for structured literacy transformation. So today the focus is reading comprehension, and we want to make sure that course has been completed prior to joining the conversations and the activities for today. We have facilitators today and moderators, and I am one of your facilitators, Jacinta McCants, and we're here to build your knowledge of foundational literacy through our online free Cox Campus structured literacy courses. This is going to set the foundation for the transformational change in your district and in your schools. You will engage in discussions today with leaders, and of course it's facilitated by the Rollins team and Godot. So facilitators are Amy Denty from the Georgia Department of Education, Ramona Brown from the Rollins Center, and myself, Jacinta McCants from the Rollins Center. We will have moderators in your breakout room, so please remember your moderator's name for when we do breakout sessions, so that if we need to rejoin a breakout session, you know who you were with. So once you get into your breakout room, your moderator will introduce themselves. All right, so let's start with an icebreaker so we can get to know who's in the room. In the chat, we would like you to name one system change that you may need to practice or you may need to make to facilitate implementation of the practices shared in your course. So name a system change that you might need to facilitate for implementation in regards to reading comprehension. So think about the way reading comprehension has been taught and has been attacked, if you will, and think about a change that might need to happen after you took the course. What change do you see possibly needing to be tweaked or totally revamped? And you can type that in the chat. All right. Oh, I see a lot. Okay.
Standards Tier 1 instruction. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Standards first, the text first. Go ahead.
I wasn't sure if you could see it. Go ahead. I'll mute.
Yeah, it's popping up pretty quickly. Let's see. Tier instruction at all levels, tier 1 instruction, all levels, improved tier 1 instruction. A lot of tier 1. Instructional strategies for tier 1 changing, more detailed planning, streamlined expectations for tier 1, interventions, tier 1 instruction, okay? Improve instructional strategies for tier 1. Yes. Oh, yes. Professional development. Get everybody on the same page. Excellent. All right. I think I got most of them. You see any others I missed?
The only one I wanted to lift was focus on process more than product. That's a big mindset shift from the way that we used to do things.
Yes, definitely. Building background knowledge, yes, and determining the focus for vocabulary. So yeah, a lot of changes. So we'll have some great lively conversations today. So we'll jump into reading comprehension, and I'll pass it off to Amy Denty.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. I know that February and March turn into really busy months as you all prepare for the coming year while you're still living this year. So thank you for making time for this today. We're here today to focus on reading comprehension, and we'll learn together and work to engage as a network and also really prepare for the change. And I enjoy reminding other stakeholders outside of education that while this seems like a big change outside of education, we've been working on this work for a long time. And so I'm thankful to be here with you all today. Let's look over our session objectives for today. We're going to, of course, reflect on what we learned in our reading comprehension course this month. This was one of my favorites of our series so far, where, as always, we'll lean into what this looks like as you implement these ideas and lessons into your school. We'll look at a real life scenario so you can talk through a real life scenario that you may experience in your own district with your colleagues here who have joined us for Knowledge Building for Leaders. And we'll hopefully prepare you to lead this work in your school and district by providing you with that tool that we always leave you with at the end that helps you collect baseline data in your schools so that you can use that data to make the future decisions about what needs to happen to support your folks. So thank y'all for being here.
Okay, now we have an opportunity to reflect on what you learned in the course. We will use this as a whole group discussion. We want you to think about and discuss what you found interesting, something you found interesting from the course, connections, share connections you made to what you already know about comprehension, and your experiences with comprehension. And then share any lingering questions that you still have. So the chat is open and you can come off mic and share your thinking with the group.
I'll just start off. I'm here in Jefferson County. I'm Dana Williams, and I'm speaking Director of Teaching and Learning. We have our leadership team here with us, our superintendent, assistant superintendent, SPED director, and Director of Teaching and Learning for 6 through 12. And one thing that I found that was very interesting, or just kind of reinforced what I remember when I was in the classroom, is the whole part about the explicit instruction, about using the complex text sets, using graphic organizers, all the things that we have to do to be able to really intentionally teach comprehension to our children. There was so much good in all of this. I can get back to the foundations and talk about the oral language development, the teaching the vocabulary with the background knowledge, us providing experiences for the children. I'm like you, I just really enjoyed this session.
Thank you for sharing.
It's great to hear those connections that you're making throughout these different courses and modules. So that was great to hear.
Yes, it's sort of a convergence of what we've explored so far through the series, as well as what we've yet to explore in the series. It's really the heart of the matter. I see that a comment in the text. It was interesting to me just how important a child's background knowledge is for their reading comprehension. Absolutely, Lee, because one thing that we've learned from the course is that it's an intersection of what the author has written as well as what the reader brings to the text. I appreciated the attention to text structure and complexity, especially in thinking about how to support teachers of upper grades in this work. Also essential. I appreciated the naming, description, and example of specific strategy application. The videos took an idea from theory to what it looks like in the classroom. Thank you, Sharon, for sharing those thoughts. That is exactly our aim, because knowledge without bringing it, operationalize it, is just knowledge. So it could be just be like a book sitting on a shelf, but it's when you actually bring it to life by facilitating those, looking at those enabling systems that we discussed before, that makes the shift in practice and the shift in outcomes for students. There is no one size fits all approach to reading comprehension. And the last one I'll read is: the focus on intentional modeling and explicit instruction make content practical for teachers. Thank you all for engaging in that reflection. We can go to the next slide. All right. So if you've joined the series before, you are familiar with Dr. Nick Philman. He'll share for the next few minutes about the Marietta story as it pertains to this current topic. Dr. Philman guides evidence-based instruction, literacy instruction, professional learning, and curriculum development for Marietta City's elementary schools. In addition to working side by side with teachers and literacy coaches, his role involves facilitating collaboration among district departments, as well as between district leaders and vital external partners, such as 95% Group, Rollins Center, Learn for Life, and Literacy How. Dr. Philman has worked with students or teachers in every grade, pre-K through 12, as an elementary homeroom teacher, literary arts teacher, gifted specialist, literacy coach, and state endorsement instructor. In January, he was recruited by the Georgia Department of Education to develop and lead a statewide literacy coaching model that scales coaching aspects of the work happening in Marietta City to districts throughout Georgia. And without further ado, I present to you Dr. Nick Philman.
Hey, thanks, Ramona. It's really neat to think back through my career while I listened to you. If anybody picked up on the pre-K and literary arts part of it, if you've ever worked with 4-year-olds, teaching them drama and public speaking was a hoot. At the time, I didn't really think of it as necessarily a literacy skill, but it 100% is, because it's oral language and building that background knowledge piece. So good morning, everybody. I was happy to hear early on that you will be taking on a scenario to think through how it could play out in your district. I am happy to be able to share how things have played out in Marietta City and kind of where we're going next, with really specific focus on this comprehension part of it. So the first thing I want to talk about is where we were. So comprehension shifts from Marietta City. We, in 2021, is when we joined the Rollins Center for that LJFA is Literacy and Justice for All undertaking, really shifting our practices in Marietta City from balanced literacy, which we were 100% invested in trying to get it to do everything we needed it to do for our kids, and just weren't seeing the results. I am the ultimate living example of know better, do better, because I spent 6 years prior to 2021 teaching teachers to get really good at guided reading and at a balanced literacy approach to make our kids proficient readers. And we had pretty much hit a wall and felt like we were doing all the right things and just weren't really seeing the results that we needed to. At that time, we had reading menus in place for our comprehension instruction. The menu there obviously means it was very open-ended. We had standards-based lessons that were created in-house by groups of teachers, really leaning into that workshop model of a really quick mini lesson and then turning kids loose to do the work and bouncing around and trying to facilitate that, and then bring everybody back together for a closing, which really also modeled itself in our small group instruction with guided reading. We extensively were using Fountas and Pinnell Guided Reading Library and Jan Richardson's guided reading templates. And if anybody has made that switch or is currently still living that guided reading life, the best way that our teachers came to understand what needed to change was that it felt like we did a quick introduction and then spent an extended period putting out fires, right? That's kind of the whole model of guided reading is you start them and then they start reading and you listen for errors that you can jump in and fix. So we were living that life and getting as good at it as we possibly could. At that time, the text really took a secondary nature. Under balanced literacy, it's really the standards, the ELA standards that are being taught, and the comprehension strategies really sort of took the front seat. And then if we could find texts that connected to our social studies or science standards, then that was always what I advised teachers to do, was if you can find those connections, then capitalize on them. But that really the standards and the skills were the main driving force. When we moved over into our training on structured literacy, at the time we were using Top 10 Tools, which is now a part of 95% Group. And it really closely mirrors what's inside of the Cox campus and the Georgia Literacy Academy modules. We took on word recognition first in 21-22. So our teachers were advised to sort of keep on keeping on when it came to that big reading menu part of it. I'm a big proponent of telling teachers that they have to do what they know how to do until I give you a new way to do it. We knew that trying to take on all the pieces at one time was a too big of a cognitive shift, both for our teachers and for our kids. So that first year, comprehension just sort of rolled along. It was really year 2 of our rollout in 22-23 when we intentionally made not a complete 180, but it feels like a hard right turn away from what we had been doing for whole group comprehension into this more structured literacy aligned approach. And we developed, again, in-house, what we are calling knowledge-based units, which flipped a good bit of that script from what we had going in 2021. The text itself moved over into the text being the primary driving force, and the knowledge being built being the central focus. The standards still serve a purpose, but now what we've trained our teachers and what they've gotten really good at by this point is using their ELA standards as tools for kids to access complex text. So instead of the standards being the goal or the purpose, the standards now become ways that kids can access these truly complex texts, which is another big shift that we made with our knowledge-based units. I feel like in the past, having text be accessible for students was the primary driving force for choosing text, because we wanted the kids to be in that work session and doing that productive struggle that didn't always end up being all that productive for our kids. So by using the knowledge building units, we select text within the quad text sets to scaffold their knowledge and their vocabulary access to the subject matter, so that when they get to that really high level complex text, they have all of this scaffolding under their belt to be able to take it on themselves and really own the text more so than just handing them a passage that they would have been able to read without any instruction from the teacher. We have embedded elements from Top 10 Tools, which are also carryovers over into the Cox Campus modules. And we use the Comprehension Blueprint by Nancy Hennessy to guide our foundational understanding of what comprehension should look like. We have also made those more of a requirement. Not sure about other districts, but the M word of mandate and the N word of non-negotiable have traditionally not been big focuses in Marietta City. We have definitely leaned more into the autonomy of our schools and our principals to make those decisions. We started tightening that up, partly because we know that research says that all teachers working towards a central resource lifts the entire building more so than it being sort of wild, wild west and everybody doing different things. But also I feel like that aligns with that explicit and systematic component of structured literacy. Because to me, and I know there's debate in the science of reading world, but I definitely feel like structured literacy applies to the entire spectrum of literacy skills, not just to those foundational level word recognition skills. So we want to be sure that our comprehension instruction is just as explicit, systematic, and diagnostic as our word recognition instruction. Year 3. Oh, actually, let me stop there. And if we can open up that KBU link for me. Beautiful. All right. So this is an example of our knowledge base units. And we're not going to walk through all of them, but I do want to sort of dive deeply into one just so you can see what it looks like that we're having our teachers teach our students. So what you see on your screen is a K5. We have definitely taken this on kindergarten all the way through 5th grade with this comprehension part of it. And I know that this audience is mostly focused on that K3. So I chose a 2nd grade example for us to dive a little more deeply into. If you can open up number 8, Georgia Change Makers. So as you can see, our KBUs are mostly written around social studies and science content. You will notice on that screen that a few of them are, make sure you guys have access.
Yeah, I don't know if you can give me access real
I can. Sorry, I thought I'd already done that. No worries. Yep. And I'll keep my window open in case you need access to any of the other documents. You should be good now. There you go. All right. So this is one of our KBUs that directly addresses social studies content. Most of them do address social studies or science. There are some that are literature based. For instance, fairy tales, poems, biographies. This one really directly aligns with our content. Our units tend to last 3 to 4 weeks. That enduring understanding that you see on the screen was a really important addition for us. Instead of just having a label of like Georgia historical figures, we really want to always give students the purpose, which goes along directly with what the module said, setting that purpose for our readers. Our teachers are provided with the ELA standards they're teaching and the social studies standards that they are teaching. Scrolling down for me. The essential questions really tell our teachers how to focus their time and energy with the students, and always thinking about scaffolding up and scaffolding down so we can give access, but also push their thinking forward. The tier 2 and tier 3 words, I know there's a separate vocabulary module that I can talk more about later on, but we do front load for our teachers what those tier 2 and tier 3 words are. The tier 1 we originally had in our initial version of the KBUs, but working with our ESOL coaches, they really helped me understand that the tier 1 words should really be more organic and conversational. So we took away pre-planning those for teachers and instead focused on the tier 2 and 3 for their instruction. The assessments piece was interesting for us. The first two categories, the transfer of integrated skills, because these are reading comprehension units, we want to be sure that the vast majority of the work they're doing inside of these is based on uniting content and comprehension. So the transfer of integrated skills are always going to be assessments that are responding to a passage, but that passage is going to relate to the content, but not be a passage that they've already learned and done lessons with inside of the unit. So I've started calling it a warm read. It's not a completely cold read because it is about a familiar topic, but it's not a hot read because it's not something they've received instruction on. Within that, though, we do also want to give them that content-specific GSE version is an assessment from our social studies planner, and the social studies and science coordinators work really closely with us to develop these. Those are going to be more of your traditional social studies assessment that requires students to recall information and apply it rather than pull it out of a text. but we want to be sure the balance of the time is on that text involved instruction and assessment. And then our learning experiences at the bottom. Again, we're going to lead off. I want to take you deeply sort of day by day. What you're looking at right now is an overall plan for the teacher. This part is not student facing. If you open up that 15-day plan, this is actually what can be more of a student facing piece. Let me make sure you have access before I keep running my mouth.
Sent
Yeah, you're
that.
good. Yep. Beautiful. All right. So this is the 15-day plan that is a day-by-day guide for the teacher themselves. And I'm not going to walk through the whole thing, but I do want to sort of highlight some big pictures. Slide 3 is the map of the entire plan. So our teachers are given lessons to teach across a series of 15 days. If you can go down one slide for me, Sam. Perfect. You'll see there the different parts of a quad text set labeled. We have our informational text, we have our assessments inside. All the assessment days are already front loaded for them, so they know exactly when they're doing that. If there is a writing component, it also lives inside of there. Currently, a lot of the text are link-based text because this is a centralized district document, and we don't have a consistent right now core reading program that all of our teachers have access to the same text in their building. Rollins recently was extremely kind enough to actually provide physical copies of the remaining books in the KBUs for the rest of the year. So definitely thank you all for that. You have been an invaluable partner. So that is sort of a roadmap for the entire unit. The next thing the teachers see are day-by-day guidance. I do want to stress for you all, the same way that I stress for our teachers, that the KBU units are designed to be a planning resource. They are not designed to be opened up and teachers just read from the slide. You always have to bring what you know about your students, other texts you've read before that have built their knowledge in different ways to the table with your kids. So these are definitely a starting point for our teachers. They are not designed to be just opened up and taught. On slide 4, we do let our teachers know right out of the gate which comprehension skills and strategies make the most sense to integrate with the text that's being taught that day. So for this lesson, you see that background knowledge, summarizing, and inferring are kind of the 3 forefront pieces. We always have to be cognizant of making sure that we're teaching comprehension along with the content, but also making sure that we don't backslide over into just this week is inferring and then next week is summarizing. So you will always see multiple strategies that the teachers are being asked to introduce at the same time. Sorry, I need to shift so I can plug my laptop in. The next slide is the before part of a lesson that we provide for our teachers. We do adhere to a really strict and consistent format of before, during, after. Before typically is going to be some sort either of engaging piece, so some hook, or a vocabulary deep dive into some of that tier 2 and tier 3 vocabulary that the students are going to need to know for that text. For this one, it's the poem about Juliet Gordon Low that the second graders are going to use is written to the tune of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. One of the things, honestly, that I really earlier on took away and was an aha moment for me is the amount to which we over assume background knowledge that our students have, especially because we have some of our schools, one is as high as 47% multilingual learner students. And just the assumption that every kid has heard Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star is something that I had never thought about, being sure that we don't assume. So this is an example of being sure we front load and make sure that all of our kids have similar prior knowledge based on what they'll need for that lesson. So that's the before for that one. Then we move over into our really looking at the content connection is what's going on here. So the social studies standard requires the students to be able to identify a certain set of cities inside of Georgia. Juliet Gordon Low is from Savannah. So we do need to identify Savannah on the map, but notice that they're doing that using wording from the poem that we're using for the lesson. So we don't stop and do a separate examination of Savannah and find its coordinates on a globe and do that separately from the text that we're using for the day. We united those two things together and used authentically the opportunity of the first time Savannah comes up in the poem to stop and have them identify and use the graphic organizer piece to actually label Savannah. You'll notice down there in the notes section for the teachers, we provide really explicit instruction on how they are going to use the resources throughout the entire unit. This map of Georgia actually becomes a consistent graphic organizer so that every time we introduce a new notable change maker, they would add on to that. I think this is just a really good example of uniting that content piece with the text being the first and foremost part that we are focused on. That next slide takes us into our during. This is the poem that we're going to be reading with our students. And if you can drag up the notes section of it, just so we can kind of see the wording of the lesson a little bit, I just wanted to highlight what it is that we're doing with the kids. This is very much a shared reading approach that's typical for early on in our units. We definitely follow a gradual release type approach where in the beginning we model, then there's lots of work with the kids and text, and then we turn the reins loose a little bit more, and eventually they completely have the ownership of it. You will see that we also have the foundational word recognition skills integrated along with the comprehension. So that second bullet being sure that our students have accurate pronunciation. That was kind of funny. Of Founded, Baden, and Powell. Our teachers are very proficient in bringing forward all the things they know from word recognition. So while we don't explicitly say to do phoneme graphing mapping or isolate the suffix, they have that teacher knowledge that doesn't need to be spelled out here. And depending on the class, some classes may need to spend a little bit longer doing some phoneme graphing mapping of a word like Powell, whereas other classes won't need to stop and do that because the students already have that level of proficiency. So there is still teacher autonomy for them to bring their own skills and their own knowledge of their kids into play here. That next slide is where we're turning those reins loose a little bit more, right? So we've done the I do part. This is still during our during, and we're really now bringing over writing as a way to solidify comprehension. So what they're doing is restating the really interesting syntax that poets tend to use in order to accomplish rhyming verses. They're undoing that adapted syntax and rewriting it more in a standard syntax. So of course, that's completely modeled. It's an opportunity to bring in all the grammar part of it. So discussing the subject, the predicate, the use of a subordinating conjunction, all of that is being pulled over from Writing Revolution, which I'll talk about in just a minute. And you'll see that we follow that progression, right? The teacher models it with one stanza. They do one stanza together. Then we challenge students with doing the remaining stanzas. So that gradual release is definitely a really, really consistent part of our process. And then we move on to our after. So our after in this case is using a Writing Revolution strategy. This one is combining sentences that the students have already learned, or to be honest, this could be their first introduction to combining sentences, depending on where the teacher is with their class. If it's brand new, then we'll probably do it completely together. If my students have already been doing this strategy for a few weeks, this could be more of an assignment. Again, that's more open-ended, depending on where the class is right that minute. One of the foundational pieces of Writing Revolution is in the red down there. You see what's called an anticipated student response. So we always want to front load for our teachers what the students should be landing close to. The close to part is important because it's not a multiple choice, has to be exactly that same wording. It just needs to capture the same knowledge. So I like that example of using new strategies, but still to focus on the ability to land that knowledge and deepen that knowledge. if you can click forward to me down to like 21, I'm going to go past. So really similar process. I did want to pause on this one to show how we're being iterative with this. So the students are using the same graphic organizer. The passage is focusing on Cairo instead of Savannah, right? But we're doing it using the text. This insert is a snip from the Epic book that is being used for the rest of the lesson. Again, just keeping things really, really authentic, and not just inserting side conversations about content. Let me scroll down to 30. Generating questions, I wanted to highlight because it's been a struggle, but it's incredibly important. And teachers tend to go to answering a lot of questions, having kids answer questions. Having them be able to craft questions is just as important, honestly, if not even more important, because being able to think about questions you have about what you're looking at and what you're reading is really what kids do when they encounter an unfamiliar text. So we embed specific focus on that in every single one of our units. At some point, there'll be a deep dive into generating questions. Slide 33 is an example of an assessment. I'm curious if you can click that one, if you have access. If not, I can just talk about it. It'll be okay. Man, I do want to, let me give you access because I want to share it really fast. And FYI, while I'm doing this, if you have requested access, I will update access and make it public after this. I just don't want time to do that right this second. But when I'm done talking, I'll make sure that you all can access it on your own. There you go. So I just wanted to show this as a quick example of the assessment still being text-based. This is from everybody's favorite ReadWorks, right? Also, I wanted to show that the notable Georgia change makers are Juliette Gordon-Low, Jackie Robinson, Martin Luther King Jr. I feel like there's a fourth one that I'll remember in a second. But notice that this assessment does have Jackie Robinson, but if you scroll on down, it also goes into Rosa Parks and other George Washington Carver. So other notable African-American contributors to society. So it's based in the same language, in the same content, but it's not just an assessment about Jackie Robinson, right? We always want to take our students and have them apply that knowledge in a larger context, because the purpose of this unit overall is not just that they know those 4 people, it's that they have expanded their background knowledge about people who've made a difference in our country and our state, and are able to carry that over then and transfer that same ability over into other things that they study. And pop back over. Just want to show that text-based part of it. Thank you. Last 2 things I want to note. If you go down to 78, yes, I said 78. It's a lot of slides, but this is 15 days worth of instruction, right? Jimmy Carter, that was the 4th one. I knew, there we go. I also wanted to emphasize that while this is a very heavily informational unit, we do always make narrative connections with inside of our comprehension instruction. It's one of the things that keeps our teachers from feeling like, I was a reading teacher, now I'm just a social studies teacher. One way of doing that is being sure that we're focused on comprehension as much as we are content. But another way is being sure to bring in narrative aspects. So it's not always just front loading facts and dates and people for our students, but also enjoying some content that is storytelling as well. If you look closely at the notes on the bottom of this slide, you will see how even though it's a narrative story, we use that narrative story to wrap back up to the previous information that was taught. So that question number 2, how is the Snoogle-Fleeger's problem similar to what Jackie Robinson experienced? Obviously, the book about this mythical sea creature that Jimmy Carter wrote in no way mentions Jackie Robinson. So it's important for us as the teachers to explicitly link that information back up so that our students get into the habit of piecing together pieces of information and ideas rather than always having to be spoon fed those connections right up front. So I just really like that aspect of that lesson. And the last slide I want to talk about is slide 80, which is our sum of assessment that I'm sure I'll have to give you access to again. I want to show you a way that we have upped the rigor.
I sent that request to you.
Got it. You should be good now. Thank you so much. So this is an example of us adapting an existing assessment. So in the past, this template just said, is each sentence correct? Or it had the sentence and then the kids would just write true, false, right? And in the lower grades, they would even just have like a thumbs up, thumbs down. So we took that existing resource and upped the level of it by keeping the statement, but now just instead of true, false, if it's true, add an additional detail that goes along with that true statement. If it's false, rewrite that statement in a way that makes it correct. And the instructional slides for the summative assessment tell the teacher to be sure the students have access to every text they have read throughout this unit leading up to the summative and all of their notes they've taken. So even as young as second grade, we want to teach our students the study habit of going back to things that they have already generated during a unit rather than just treating every new assignment like it's the first time they've seen this idea. So that's where I wanted to land with that piece. If you can flip back over to the year by year. So that's a KBU kind of in a nutshell, which we debuted in 22-23. We updated them this year. So we are currently updating them with that lesson level guidance. This year is when we took on Writing Revolution. So it's the first year those strategies have been embedded. And now that it's in its second year, it's become more of a required resource. Still with the option, with the ability and honestly encouragement to differentiate what the teachers do inside of those units, but under the guidance of their literacy coach. We are blessed in Merida City to have a literacy coach in every one of our elementary buildings. And so any differentiation that a teacher does, any massaging of the content or the process really needs to be done in concert with their literacy coach. Number one, because they shouldn't have to do it on their own. We have people to walk alongside them to do that work. But also because if teachers are left in a silo to differentiate, often they will differentiate back to what is comfortable for them rather than what is necessary for the students. So the literacy coach acts as a support, but also sort of as an accountability partner to make sure that things are going the way that we need them to go. Moving over into 24-25, where we are looking going forward, is we intentionally did not purchase a core reading program at the very beginning of this journey. We really, based on input from our experts and our own research, it was more important that our teachers knew how to make these changes from a pedagogical level rather than handing them a new box and teaching them to just use this new box. However, our teachers have now gotten really good at that pedagogical part of it, which for us, luckily, aligns with the new Early Literacy Act, which now requires districts to have either a core reading program or a bundle of high quality programs that they put together. So we are, as of March 12th, our board will be voting on or receiving and approving, hopefully, the program that we have landed on. So now that our teachers know how to do this, we are comfortable with them applying that knowledge into a specific program. Along the way, though, we did introduce new resources. So I talked about in the first year, 22-23, we gave them Comprehension Blueprint. This year, our primary focus has been on writing. And if you'll open up that K-5 structured literacy progression. Oh, good. One that I already did access to. Beautiful. What this document is the rollout of our PD, just in case anybody wants access to it. We really debated whether to give writing its own year or to explicitly connect writing within our comprehension rollout year and going back and forth and getting different people's input. Writing is such a cognitively demanding skill, and it really does bring in all the other parts of the reading rope. We decided to really devote an entire year to delivering planning within Writing Revolution, while also making specific connections over to the training we had done for word recognition and comprehension. So I look at Writing Revolution as a comprehension tool, not just as a writing tool. And what this progression shows is how we've structured the different PD across the year. And then the second part of that, the second page, you'll see the way that we have staggered when the students are introduced to the different skills. So we want to introduce it to our teachers in PD, give them time to practice with it, grapple with it, figure it out, then time them putting it in front of their students. That also let us front load the year with the pieces that they had learned from year 2 comprehension rollout at the beginning of the year before adding brand new strategies. And that is it for me. So that's where we are as Marietta. That is our journey up to now. And we are excited to apply all of these new skills to a core reading program next year. As of course, we also teach our teachers the new K-12 ELA standards.
Awesome job, Nick. Thank you for sharing all of the hard work that you all have done in Marietta City Schools. I'm not sure if you have a few minutes to entertain 2 or 3 questions, or if you'd like for them to put it in the Jamboard that we have at the end of the presentation.
I have to be back in front of teachers at 11. So I've got probably 5 minutes that I can do a couple of questions.
Okay, I will.
And then I'm happy to circle back to the Jamboard. Yeah.
Yes, I will keep the time honest. We'll take 2 or 3 quick questions. Let's see. Right now we see thank you for sharing, and according to my clock it is 10:52, and we want to make sure that we honor your presence. We've got a question from Sally Robinson. After all of this work on these Georgia Standards Aligns KBUs, why are you shifting to a core program? Would it not work to bundle with your KBUs? Good question.
Great question. Really, one of the biggest reasons is that these are developed in-house. And while I do trust the expertise of our coaches and our teachers, we are not trained curriculum writers. So there are definitely holes in the comprehension piece that we know that we don't really discover until it's too late, right? Until the gap has to be discovered, and then we can try to backfill it. Having a really high quality core program will give us all those pieces already mapped out together so that our teachers don't have to find those holes and fill them themselves.
Excellent. And the last quick question, will the units he was referencing, that you were referencing, be shared? I did drop the link in the chat to that document that has the links to the units that he was sharing. I will drop it again there. He said that he will go in and make all of the links public, so that anyone who will can access them.
Yep.
And go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm going to also drop into the chat all of our units are publicly available to our parents on our website. That will probably be the easiest way for you all to access them without me having to update specific access.
Okay.
Awesome, Nick. You have given us so many pearls of wisdom. I love specifically sort of where you landed, that your process has equipped teachers with knowledge that they can now apply when you all adopt a core curriculum. The whole goal and focus behind the science of reading for me is equipping the teachers so that they're smarter than any curriculum.
Yes.
Investing in our human resources as the primary, I think, is one way that we can re-elevate our profession to the status that we already know that it is, and the
Yep,
value.
Agreed. Teachers
Well,
can do it.
thank you. Go ahead.
I was just saying teachers can do it. We have to just give them the tools.
With support.
Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I know you have to run for an 11 o'clock.
Yes.
And we'll forward any questions that occur later on the Jam board. Thank you again.
All right. Sounds good. Thank y'all.
Absolutely. I see a question. What recommendation would you give to a district who is having to adopt a program soon, but hasn't had the 2 years prior to develop that knowledge base? I'm gonna put that in the Jam board, but my immediate thought is deciding on 2 specific curriculums and them going through a curriculum audit. There's one available on the FCRR website, but also the Reading League has an audit that schools can go through or districts can go through. And Amy, you may be able to, I'm not sure if you have any recommendations on that.
So, and Corey, I think that that's a great question. And I'm sure that's something that many of our colleagues that are on today are thinking about. And so I love the idea of the audits, but I also think that part of that is just that bridging to practice. And so as teachers are engaged in the Georgia Literacy Academy and Cox Campus modules, being able to bridge to practice by having intentional planning sessions. You know, it's always incredible to me when I see the work that Marietta City has done. And so I'm going to put on my curriculum director hat and tell y'all that I think, oh gosh, if I was still in a district, how would I be leading this work? And it's big. And so I do think to take it in small pieces and to have those very intentional planning sessions. You know, if you have literacy coaches in your building, of course, they can lead those. But many of our buildings don't have literacy coaches. But I believe that by empowering the teachers with some frameworks for making that happen, whether they have a core series or whether they have bundles of supplemental series, that planning the piece is so important. And it's unfortunately often a place that we just get in too big of a hurry with. And that's not an indictment. It's the way it is. And so we have to make sure that we get more intentional about it. That probably wasn't a great answer, Ramona, but that's what I've got this morning.
That was excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that, especially the intentional planning. Because the devil is in the details.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say or reiterate something that I've shared with the district that I work with is that when we equip our teachers and support our teachers with the knowledge needed, we are not solely reliant on a curriculum because we know the science is ever evolving and publishers can't publish the material at the speed of the evolution of science. And so we want to stay ahead of the curve by making sure that our teachers are knowledgeable and have that job embedded professional development by the coach is essential in places where that's possible. All right, I think we can go to the next slide.
Before I do that, Ramona, Mitch just sent me a quick note that he wanted me to share with everyone. He just wanted to reiterate that the purpose of his sharing the KBU today was to show the shifts that have been possible based on their science of reading / structured literacy professional development, not to necessarily encourage everyone to use theirs or to even create their own versions.
Thank you for that, because again, that lifts one of the key points from the course itself, that it's not about the product, it's about the process. And so using that as a guide of what your process could look like, but not again taking it as a consumer, but using it more as a point for creating what could be. All right, next slide. Okay, so now is the application piece where we're going to enter a breakout room where you will discuss this real life scenario. During a district walkthrough, you attend a PLC where the instructional coaches are helping teachers plan a 4-week-long unit about main idea and details. During the unit, teachers will read multiple books for the purpose of identifying the main idea and details. How can you advise coaches to shift the focus from strategy-based instruction units towards knowledge-building units for their comprehension instruction? So that's the scenario. In a moment, you will get an invitation to join a breakout room. We will have 8 minutes, in the breakout room. And then we will return to the main room where we hope that you will share your pearls of wisdom that were shared in your breakout room. And I'll let Sam take it away.
Yes, and just a note to my internal folks, my moderators, you're going to see the rooms have been named after yourself. So if you could please just choose to hop into the room with your name on it, and I'll go ahead and get these open.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, we were wrapping up a conversation in our room. Adrian, if you would put any additional thoughts that you have in the chat. The question was around what is most important for new teachers to come equipped with in order to tackle the comprehension. But I think in general, it was what should they come equipped with? What sort of knowledge base? And so thank you for sharing that question and the answer. I'm actually going to put the response, preferred response in here real quick. Comprehension instruction should focus on knowledge building purpose, while explicit instruction of strategies and skills is still important. Units are necessary. Units should center around building knowledge, strategies, and skills should be applied towards the larger goal of building a mental representation of the text or a mental model. Thank you, Stephanie. Would you like to share, you or one of your participants in your room like to share what you gleaned from the discussion that you all had?
I'm going to give them an opportunity if they would like to share. I mentioned it to see if they're comfortable, but they can tell me really quick if not. And maybe not. So I'll move forward. That's okay. I try to encourage.
Stephanie, you helped me here. So I was just making the comment that we're actually at our school district going through this right now. And we are sitting through a lot of discussions and a lot of presentations trying to choose an HQIM. So those high quality instructional materials. And what we have found, because I'm at a primary school, is that we have built a lot of capacity with foundational skills, right? So the last couple of years, we've built a lot of capacity and knowledge around phonics and phonological awareness, which is appropriate for, it's not the end all be all, but what we're finding as we're sitting in these meetings, having to now go to the next step of choosing a content-rich program, Ramona, you know what I'm going to say. Our teachers have not made now that shift.
Yeah.
They're still wanting those strategies to be in the foreground and the content to be in the background. And now we need to build more capacity around, no, it's really putting that content in the foreground. And if we don't do it, we're going to choose the wrong curriculum. So that's the
Yes.
real life struggle that we're in right now in our district.
Yeah.
That's beautifully
Yeah.
said, Julie. And Amy, I wanted you to hear that because I maybe wanted to hear your thoughts on that. So
Well, I think that Julie's district is not alone. I mean, this is I feel like most days I'm drinking from a fire hose, and I know that most of you probably feel the same way too. And so as we're learning and having to make these shifts, it's a lot, quite frankly. But I will say that that's why it's so important for to join in these collaborative conversations like this. Number one, so that you're not alone, that you're not out there on an island working through this alone, that your colleagues are working through it as well. But and I'm a real believer that we build from our strengths. We don't build from our weaknesses. And so, like Julie talks about the great work that they've done at their primary school on building those foundational skills. And so they can build on that. That's their positive. But you have to take it in that next step. And I think it's just like the reading rope. We want it to be braided tightly together. We want all of these things to braid tightly together so that we end up with that skilled reader. That's the goal. And the process that we get to that goal is really important.
Thank you. Yeah, keeping that process at the forefront. And as Nick mentioned, it was a hardship for them in Marietta. So helping them to understand that, yes, this is a hard right. However, we're in this together, and just harnessing the power of the collective, as well as lifting up the knowledge and appreciating the knowledge that has been acquired and applied. I almost think that the celebration of what hard work has been done already is sort of the foundation before making that big shift. And I know we're always up against time, right? That's always the barrier that we face. But if we want to get it right, and if we keep that at the forefront and understand that, yes, the time is tight and it's a little uncomfortable at times, but sort of pressing forward by celebrating those things that have been done well. Okay, and I think we can go to the next slide. And if either Sam or Jacinta, if you will drop the links for the tool in the chat for the coaching tool. Once that's dropped in the chat, I will give a couple minutes for you all to take a look at the coaching tool. One thing you'll notice about the design of our coaching tool is that it's comprehensive. So we start with the equity of voice, which is the oral language piece. We also include the phonemic awareness piece and the phonics piece, the fluency, and then the comprehension. So for this next minute or so, if you'll just key in on the comprehension piece and sort of think about what your teachers need in order to operationalize these practices. I think it's, yes, there we go.
Yeah, I'm just sharing it on my screen because I'm looking at the link. I think this is a SharePoint link. I'm not sure that all of our participants can get to this.
Gotcha. All right. If you'll scroll down to the last section. To the comprehension section.
It's easy for
And
people to see.
yes, yes, thank you. That black background was not eye friendly.
And for everybody who's a participant, we'll send out a shareable link for this after the session, but you can follow along with us here on the screen.
Okay. All right. So scroll up some more. Okay, right. It's kind of hard with the scrolling.
Which header do you need me to be on? Systematic and explicit instruction?
No, it's towards the bottom where the background knowledge.
Here we go.
Yes. Okay. So thinking about some of these headers, lessons intentionally activate and build knowledge for students. I think that was apparent in the design that Marietta took, the design approach. I see Maggie saying, one thing I'm thinking about as I listen about the challenge of selecting curriculum. I'm sorry, it went away because another. Building knowledge and creating text sets. How do we help all children see themselves in the content we are featuring? The notable people we highlight, for example, and the children learn about people or content different from themselves and their experiences. How do we build knowledge while keeping at the front of our minds the many strengths and experiences children come to our classrooms with and leveraging those? Yes, absolutely. And she is specifically thinking about the diverse cultures and language, which we know our schools are becoming increasingly diverse. And one of our missions at the Rollins Center is literacy and justice for all. And so part of that is helping students see themselves and others. Part of developing the deep reading brain, or an indicator of the deep reading brain, is being able to have empathy and compassion from others. And that exposure often comes through the work that we do around text. So I know that we have about 3 minutes here. We will definitely provide for you an accessible link to this tool. The call to action is between now and our next session is to take this tool and gather some data on where you are, and let that lead you in the formulation of the plan for where you want to go. We will also drop in the chat the course guide. That is a good complement if you're wanting to take teachers through the course at a meaningful pace. That is a great way to re-deliver the knowledge to help to make the shifts that need to happen in your building. And if we can go back to the PowerPoint. So a lot has been shared, so I wouldn't be surprised if you leave here with some questions. We're going to drop a link in the chat to a Jamboard. It's got questions for Nick, but you don't have to limit those questions to Nick. Any questions that you have that come up, because again, this is a very heavy topic. And like Amy mentioned, it can feel like you're drinking water from a water hose. So one way we can leverage the collective is by sharing our thoughts and questions as a part of these sessions. And we can move to the next slide. Thank you, Jefferson County, for bringing the whole team. I love it.
I do too.
There is going to be a webinar poll that is launched, and with just a few short questions. If you would give us the gift of your feedback so that we can continue to provide a forum that is relevant and supportive of your very important work. All right, and just a preview of upcoming attractions. Next session, we will look at vocabulary instruction. The date for that is March 25th. Be sure to join us on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, any of the social media outlets. That is another way that we can keep the conversation going. And once again, thank you so much for your investment of time in this important work, your engagement in the conversations in the breakout rooms. And we look forward to seeing you next month on March 25th.
Bye, everybody. Thank y'all.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. So our next assignment for next month is it vocabulary? No.
Yes, vocabulary instruction.
Okay, vocabulary. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yolanda, I was wrong in our little breakout. Read alouds are the following month. Read alouds are April.
Oh, okay. Okay. No,
Sorry
no
about
problem. No, I'm trying to keep up with all of it. So, it's I'm enjoying it. I think the videos are very helpful, and then the resources. I just love what you guys have shared, and I'm always talking about like what you guys have done here with Cox Campus. We're in the process right now and trying to figure out what we need to do for our teachers in Gwinnett County. We're kind of working on a little write-up and thinking that through, because I guess as far as meeting those professional learning requirements, are you finding that most districts are going to have teachers take this course as a requirement to fulfill that, or like what have you been learning or discovering?
So many districts are, Yolanda, many districts are using the Georgia Literacy Academy, which is the Cox Campus modules.
Right.
And but there are some districts that are using other IDA accredited programs. We have a lot of districts who are engaging in letters.
Right.
We have a lot of districts engaging in AIM Institute. We have some districts that are engaging in this work through endorsements, through like a dyslexia endorsement for all of their folks. And so there are a lot of different ways. I think the conversations that y'all are having are important. The important thing is to decide on one and then make sure that it's not just teachers watching videos, that it's the implementation piece. And that's so important.
Thank you so much for that. I'm wondering, as far, because the courses are free, they're already like self-paced, which is amazing. Would you recommend, like, since like I'm going through the course, like someone lead that work, like if teachers can come together face to face? Our struggle, we have so much professional learning in our district in Gwinnett, and we're finding that after the pandemic, which you guys are probably seeing this as well, we're having a hard time getting people back into face-to-face learning. So a lot of our learning is offered through Zoom, but even through that, like when it's optional, our attendance is really not high. But would you kind of recommend at least like an optional face-to-face that people can join, rather than just going like all self-paced through all the courses?
Yeah, I actually recommend mandatory, some sort of mandatory small group follow-up. It doesn't have to be on a big professional learning day where the whole school is it can be during regular professional learning communities. I do think that you've got to, provide your coaches or your lead teachers or whoever might be leading that with the support, all of the resources that come with these Cox Campus modules are excellent resources. But if you don't have somebody that's leading you through that, people
Right.
might forget that they downloaded those during the
Yeah.
session. And so
Right.
just short, like job embedded, real
Yes.
time opportunities to talk
Right.
about those.
Yeah.
And so that's just my
Yeah, that's
opinion.
helpful.
Mhm.
And that's what we've been trying to think through is, you know, they used to have so much like with the math standards and everything else they have to teach, just trying to think of ways like maybe they could do like digital learning days or, you know, professional learning days or whatever. But yeah, we're just trying to think through that work. And one of your colleagues actually emailed me back this morning, Nadia, because I had reached out just as a thought partner. So she did get back to me. So I'm going to reach out to her. And she said that we can actually meet in person. I'm just looking for kind of another person to get in the boat with me as we're kind of planning out this work, you know, for our teachers. So I do appreciate everything you guys are doing.
And Yolanda, if I might make two other suggestions, I brought up the course guide. That would
Right.
be a great complement to lead them
Right.
through the modules so that it's reflective and it heightens the chance that it will actually be operationalized.
Right.
And then the other thing when thinking about assigning the coursework is plotting it on sort of like a timeline. So if it's like a
Okay.
2-hour course, like
Right.
30 minutes a week,
Okay.
that's built
Okay.
in the schedule some way is
Okay.
another piece of advice that I would give.
Okay. All right. Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you. Appreciate your investment of time.
Yes. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.